So today we're heading underwater and diving into the world of kelp, starfish, mangroves, and more. Why? Because the ocean is an amazing place. Take humble old kelp, for example. It might look like seaweed to you and me, but just this one species holds so many keys to the health of our home planet, and us humans too. These natural factories also provide us with everything from food to pharmaceuticals, but only if we look after them. And sadly, we haven't been doing so. In fact, around 50% of the world's kelp forests have been destroyed in the last 50 years. Fortunately, Seatrees is on a mission to regenerate the health of our ocean planet, and co-founder Michael Stewart is joining us today from West Coast, USA, to tell us all about it.
Ben, thanks for the invite here.
So you're a surfer. You grew up by
hmm
the ocean. You've been vice chair of Surfrider Foundation in San Francisco. You're founder of Sustainable Surf, and as if that wasn't enough,
hmm
you're now co-founder of Seatrees, which we're of course here to talk about today. Can you tell me
Yep.
how and when this obsession with the ocean began?
Well, considering that we all actually carry the ocean, in our literal, veins, right? The same, salinity profile in the ocean is what we actually carry in our veins. We came from the ocean and we brought it out with us. So, with that in mind, I'm going with from day one. That's when the obsession with ocean really began, right? Someplace really magical. That feeling has always stuck.
So I spend most of my time on top of the ocean, but you're actually spend a lot of time under the ocean as well, right? Which is, it's almost like outer space in some ways, isn't it? It's right there on our doorstep. We don't actually see into it very often. Very few of us put goggles on and actually spend the time under there. But you
Yeah.
do. So, I mean,
hmm
obviously, sadly, when we talk environmental issues, we often talk about things are not going the way they could be or should be. What changes have you seen in the ocean in your lifetime of loving it and spending time in it?
Let me go back to that point that you just made about the moonscape, right? Or
Mm,
sorry, the ocean being like outer space,
outer
right?
space. Mm.
Yeah. We actually know way more about outer space than we do about the ocean that is literally the defining element of our entire planet. Isn't that crazy? I
That is
mean,
super crazy.
yeah, we've explored like 2%, you know what I mean? And we know very little about, how it actually operates. Unfortunately, some of the places that I hold dearest, I have already seen those changes in the last few decades, right? So take the absolute most recent example of that is right here in Northern California. We've lost over 95% of the historical bull kelp forest that used to be on this coastline just since 2013, 2014. And what happened in that particular case is that the impact of climate change directly in the ocean um, really showed what we're actually doing to the planet, right? So there was this piece of warm water called the warm blob, lasted for about 3 years, from 2014, 15, 16. And it was a marine heat wave, right? Like happens on the Great Barrier Reef, right? It also happened out here. And it wasn't, 3 months, it was 3 years. And so that actually caused a bacteria to attack the starfish, like all the species, right? It was actually called the starfish wasting disease. And the biggest impact really was that it took out one starfish in particular called the sunflower star. This thing is massive, dude. It gets to be almost a meter in width, 24 arms, and it's the most voracious starfish in the ocean. It looks like something out, out of a horror movie that a 6-year-old would design. And it's also the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen. And this thing will hunt sea urchins down, and can eat 40 to 60 a day. That was the last predator in the kelp forest ecosystem that was keeping the urchins, who are, they're awesome, amazing little creatures. They're basically little cows. They're just grazers, right? And when they're at the right number, they're doing, a super important job in that ecosystem. But when that last predator got completely knocked out and is now functionally extinct on the West Coast, that's what triggered this cascade, right? So very quickly, with no predators, the purple sea urchin in this case overpopulated. Everyone had a big party, right? And got busy, and the next year the population size exploded, and they very quickly ate basically the entire kelp forest, right? And we have yet to recover, from that. So again, it's like those things. Sometimes it's quick, like, oh, I came back, and every year there's a little less of this, barrier island, or a little less of this coral reef, or some parts were bleached, but it came back. And then other times, tipping point. It's those things where the system is doing what appears to be fine, and all the way up into the moment until it's not, right? And
it is crazy as humans, we don't understand those kick-on effects.
right. Well, and also I'll tell that to surfing friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a shame, but we don't get quite as tangled up during low tide if we're surfing or something." And then I go back and say, these are real social economic issues, right? So we had a $20 million red sea urchin fishery, right, on the North Coast. That is gone, done. That is real hard dollars taken out of these hard scrabble, coastal communities here. The dive shops all shut down because there's no more kelp forest. We haven't had an abalone diving season, right? So all the people camping and getting beer and getting ice and buying gas, all of those things, those are all impacts of not actually having a kelp forest, let alone the impact for all the other fish, sea lions, the whales that use the kelp forest, right? So it isn't just like, oh, this one thing is gone. It's like, no, this is the heart of the entire ecosystem. Think about it like this: whether it's a kelp forest or a coral reef or a shellfish reef or whatever else, that's like the city, right? So you live in Sydney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if the infrastructure of Sydney was completely flattened. Is it just about the infrastructure, like, oh, that building or that pipe or that bus line? Or no, it's like, where do people get their food? Where's their shelter? Where does education happen? Like that's how people should be thinking about this. It's like it's the wholesale destruction of the infrastructure upon which everything else hangs.
It is literally.
That's how important it actually is.
It's nature's infrastructure, isn't it? And look, This is the great challenge, isn't it? But we, as you say, it's the other fish and everything too. But we humans depend on it. And I find it sad but true. But do you find that when you tell the story in those terms, people get it? Like, we kind of don't care about nature, but we care when it affects us. Is that sadly the truth for some people?
For some people, right? And I'm so glad that you brought up, how do you actually talk about these things, right? Because, scientifically, if I was just to put a science framework around this, right, and talk about the trophic, web and all these things, which are one way to really frame what this habitat or this infrastructure is actually doing. The other way is to talk about the stories that people can actually relate to, which is, you want to go and take your family on the weekend camping trip, right? And you want to go surf, and you want the kelp line out there to keep the wind down in the afternoon so that you and your kids can go surfing, or you can teach, someone about the joys of the ocean. And so when we're trying to get people to understand the coolness of what the ocean actually has, from the animals to the activities, because those are the things that people actually care about, and they need something to like that's tangible that they can actually hold on to. And I actually have a very special guest that I brought to this interview.
Oh,
Do, do
good
you want to meet
news.
him?
I
Good news.
100% do.
Okay, so this guy right here,
Oh, wow.
this is a purple sea urchin. This is the
Nice.
top of him right here, and this guy's alive. This is the bottom. That's where his mouth is, right there. It's got the
Wow.
coolest little, sharpening teeth. But when you start telling the overall story of like, oh, here's how this little, critter moves. Here's, where they eat the kelp. Here's how they gather it. You're actually creating an on-ramp for people to
Mm.
become interested, not just in the data that you have to talk about or the jargon that you can throw around. It's like, give people something real that they can actually, tie onto. And I just brought this little purple sea urchin from the kelp forest restoration project that I was at just yesterday, right? And this is one of the little guys that we're taking out of the ecosystem because there is an overabundance of them. And by us reducing the overall numbers, we allow the natural regeneration to happen. And we're also setting up in these places where we've been able to get the urchins back down to the correct density. We're actually starting to plant kelp, so that we're creating a seed bank in that same place that can actually take hold there now that the entire place isn't covered with a zombie army of sea urchins that are just waiting for any little bit of kelp to actually grow, right? And then, this guy is actually going to be. I'm taking this to a friend's party, and we're going to have fresh uni that just got brought from the sea, right? And then its shell and all the calcium and the little spines can be composted. We'll close that cycle. I got this great thing here. I got all kinds of stuff here.
It's a pink beanie for anybody listening and not watching.
It's a
It's a
pink
very,
beanie. Check it out.
it's very nice.
It's handmade by a local artist friend, and this color was derived from the spines of the purple sea urchin. It makes the coolest pink color you've ever seen in the world, right?
So you're using the spines as dye for
That's
the beanie.
exactly right. Yeah. So many ways to like connect people in a really interesting, artistic, economic way. It's just way more interesting than listening to a scientist talk about how dire it is that we've lost all these things and the trophic web of life, has been broken. All of which is fundamentally true. But we need people to actually pay attention and you got to capture their attention in the first place, right? You ran an agency for a long time, right?
I did.
And we are competing, right, in this world with all the TikTok influencers and the latest hit, the latest Marvel movie, and whatever else. And we actually have to recognize that, right? It's like, how can the stories that we have about the work that we're doing and why it's so important and meaningful to someone's life, we got to like, there are so many cool stories about that overall process. And it feels like people simply haven't been trying hard enough and haven't really understood that, story is king, right? And framing it in the correct way to get attention, create engagement, and then last but not least, provide an on-ramp to take action, right? And that's at the heart of what we actually do.
And I love how it starts with the positive. It just showing me that beanie is awesome because you go, look at this cool little beanie. It's got your nice little
This
logo on it.
freaking beanie.
Yeah, but then the story of where the dye came from and how by doing that, that dye is actually coming from basically an oversupply of urchins, that if we can reduce their numbers, will actually help the urchins too, and becomes nature's little factory, right, for how we produce fundamentally a natural materials with a natural dye. You've entered me on a very positive conversation instead of talking about the negative, which is really easy to fall into when we're talking about environmental issues, right?
There you go.
It's so speaking of stories, you actually have a nice little video on your website, which you've mentioned bits of it, but I'll just break it down a little bit to slow it down. But it seems,
Yeah.
from what I gathered from the story, tell me if I got the story right, that at least in the San Francisco coast, what you're doing is, as you said, you're pulling out some of the urchins so that there's less of them, less hungry little mouths to feed. That gives the
Hmm.
kelp a chance to regenerate. So you're actually starting to almost plant kelp. But you also, I saw there's a laboratory actually growing the starfish too. So
My
you've almost
favorite story.
picked so you've actually picked all the pieces of the ecosystem. Obviously, you can't cool the ocean. That would be the best one, right? If you could solve that problem. But you're actually
Yeah.
literally breaking down nature's system and improving each one of those pieces to create a holistic solution. Tell me about that, because that's where Seatree started, right?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up because it's such a great way of actually thinking about the overall problem, right? So, yeah, as you said, the ultimate solution that still has to happen is um, we have to reduce the use of fossil fuels, which is warming up the overall planet, 25% of that carbon and an enormous amount of heat that is also generated is going directly into the oceans. That's what's causing all of these changes, right? Um, we're working on that part in a different part of the overall business. But when it comes down to the individual ecosystems, we're basically taking a different approach with different nonprofit partners that we're helping to fund and bring best practices to. And on the kelp side of things, yeah. So there are local diving groups that are removing urchins or even culling them um, in the ocean space, depending on the overall permit that they have. Right. That's one part. It's like we have to reduce the number of urchins. Great. Next is um, we actually have to put the predators back into the system. There's no way to rebalance that overall system if there is no top predator there, right? So in that case, we're helping to fund this great little lab called the Sunflower Star Lab right down in Monterey Bay. And that's its whole fascinating story. But basically, all the starfish in California were wiped out. The only place that the sunflower starfish were left were in two aquariums that were not connected to the ocean. That's the last like six sunflower starfish and the whole West Coast were in these aquariums. So they actually took these guys, put on some Barry White music, and a sneaky cup of wine. And with that reproductive material, they've given it out to a number of different labs to essentially say, we don't know anything about sunflower starfish like life cycle or reproduction or how any of this works. Please try to figure something out here, right? And that lab has done the best job out of all of them in terms of raising like healthy, happy little sea stars that actually know what they're hunting for and how to get it. In fact, my kids, as I call them, they're basically like teenagers now. I literally saw them from the microscope in the beginning. Now they're like this big. So I don't know, maybe like a small saucer, right? And they actually just got their first field trip to the ocean. So the lab got a permit to basically take a number of these out into the ocean in a contained box and whatever else, and leave them there for 24 hours so that they got their first taste of the real ocean, right? Because you're essentially trying to show through the laboratory's work that this is possible, that it can work and it will work and it won't mess anything up in terms of putting these animals back out into the ocean so that you're not introducing any pathogens or whatever else. And that's how you actually have to think about these problems, which are very, very complex. And so that's how we think about solving this problem. It's like we have to monitor so that we understand what's happening and also what was there, what was lost, and what's actually being recovered. We have to put the top predators back into the system, and then we have to actually create the conditions on the ground for the kelp to be able to come back naturally, because we will never take enough urchins out of the ocean or crush them. But what we can do is be the catalyst, right? That creates the conditions for the natural systems that the ocean has to bring itself back to life. And that's one of the most important things that I want to stress here, right? Is that, that's how actions like Seatrees, that's how our efforts should really be looked at, right? Is like, we are this catalyst that will get natural regeneration, which is how the earth and these ecosystems have always brought themselves back from catastrophes. We need to get them going again. And once they do, it's actually going to be hard to stop them.
So it's human intervention to restart nature's natural processes, really.
We're the ones that broke it.
True that.
Right?
So we've got the divers, we've got the lab that's making the sunflower starfish. We've got a lot of organizations. You haven't mentioned Seatrees. How does Seatrees fit into all this, and kind of coordinate all this and make it happen?
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you asked, because even in most of our films, right, we're highlighting and showing the real heroes, which are the people that are on the ground doing the actual work, the scientists, the conservation, the community members, all that, because the role of Seatrees is to really understand that the story has to be told. The story has to actually get out to the world. The funds have to be raised, right? The science and the data, the transparency behind what's happening, the documentation, so that when donors around the world, including some of the biggest brands in the world that are our partners in this, that they can actually trust that when the money is being donated to us, that it's having the type of impact that it actually has, right? Because one of the things that I learned early on was in the ocean space, because coral reefs are different than kelp forests, they're different than seagrass meadows, they're different than mangrove forests, they're different, than coastal watersheds and shellfish reefs and things like that. It was so hard to try to talk about the commonalities that all of these systems have. And the one, commonality, basically, we needed a unit of measurement and a unit of impact, right? And ta-da, that's where the name Seatree was actually born, right? So I know that you were asking, like, cool, okay, so what is the Seatree, right? Well, a Seatree is going to be different depending on the ecosystem that the project is actually happening, right? So if it's in a mangrove forest, that Seatree is going to be one mangrove seedling and it gets grown into an actual tree. If it's a coral reef restoration project, that's going to be one fragment of coral that is grown on lines, outplanted, and turns into a brand new thriving reef, right? If it's kelp, we'll do it in a square foot, right? Because so a Seatree is really this unit of impact and measurement that we get to put over the ocean, and it is a unit that can be measured, validated, and counted, and that's what the donors, especially businesses, which we really focus on, need in order to know what they're doing with their money, and is the impact real, and is it actually happening, right? So that's what we bring to our partners. Is we bring the ability to say, we know how to tell stories, to create them, we know where the pots of money are, we know how to go after them and get them, and we know how to bring the monitoring, verification, and reporting that a marketplace that we're trying to build to support this is going to demand.
So that's interesting. So what you found is these people who are on the ground are actually doing the work, in a way, you're helping coordinate them so you have this ecosystem approach rather than you're doing that bit, that bit. You're then providing, I guess, the overarching infrastructure that they don't have the capability to do. And that comes down to telling each story, but also the cohesive story. You're also providing the measurement system, which they probably wouldn't have. You've actually created the measurement system through the concept of a Seatree. And then you're providing an overarching funding mechanism to it. So, and that is a very scalable model because, like we've talked about California's kelp forests, obviously, but that, as we say, is where you began. But looking at your impact to date, you've California to Kenya to Cambodia to Costa Rica, you've actually got a goal to support 100 projects globally, and you're probably not that far off it. And at the same time, you're managing to standardize this approach and really move it across ecosystems, as you say. In some places it's mangroves, in some places it's coral, in some places it's kelp. So you've actually created this really nice holistic way to affect the entire ocean. I'll move to the funding in a minute because it's such an important part of this, as you know, but I just want to take it right back. How did you figure that out? And then when you've got that idea, where do you begin? Like you go, oh, I see the problem, I need this. But to go from I see the problem, the opportunity to actually be doing this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, Ben, how do you eat an elephant?
I don't eat a lot of elephants, but
I don't either. So I have no idea how to eat an elephant. But but I do know, right, that the longest journeys in the world, they all still begin with that one step. Or if you're a California gray whale that's migrating from down in Baja all the way up to Alaska, and we have projects all along their routes and overall stops, then it's going to begin, with that first flipper pole. But this really did start from this idea of what if we looked at conservation and restoration in just a fundamentally, different way, that it wasn't simply, let's start a nonprofit filled with great people and good intentions and try to ask people for money so that we could do good in the world, throw a gala, do a dinner, do a bake sale, right?
Raffle.
And try to raise raffle. Yeah. It's like a trivia night at the bar,
yes.
right?
So many options.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, movies in the car park, all of which we still do. But it really just came down to this idea of like, why is it so profitable, for someone to start a nonprofit and run it in this really, amazing scalable way to create this impact, most of which is bad. Why is that so profitable? And yet, if you want to do the same thing and take that same model and actually restore the earth instead of extract from it, hardly anyone's doing it. And I come from being an entrepreneur and starting up businesses that did some really cool and really cool and unique things. And I just figured this structure is the best way if you actually want to solve a problem or do something that there is, period. And that's not just my opinion. It's like, look at who has the money. Look who has, the impact in the world. And it's for better or for worse. And in many cases, it's been the worst side of things. It's the biggest brands and corporations out there, the smallest brands and corporations, the mid-size, right? They're all using that same model. Why aren't environmental nonprofits trying to harness the power that that model actually has, right? So it really wasn't a genius move. It was why don't we just do that? Because that is successful, that is scalable. And could we come up with this, overarching unit that could go across all these different places and have a unifying fact? It's like zeros and ones, Ben, right? The digital world wouldn't be here today if someone hadn't essentially had the idea of like, well, everything can be represented in a bit, right? It's either on or it's off. It's a 0 or a 1. And you can build anything you want from that simple equation, right? So that's what we're doing with the Seatree. Let me bring this back to the interview that you did with Kate from 1% for the Planet, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So she's amazing. And um, that model has actually proven itself to be incredibly effective. What do they raise now? About $846 million, right? To help restore our home planet. Um, for Seatrees, I want us to be the catalyst for raising $846 billion for our ocean planet. And if you think I'm just joking, then they obviously haven't read your website, where you basically make the case that, hey, Patagonia is $1 billion company, right? And that's a big pile of money, but it's a rounding error for some of the biggest businesses in the world, right?
Mhm.
But the case that you make, it's part of the reason I wanted to come on here, was you clearly understand the value of a catalyst, because what Patagonia did was catalyze about $2 trillion worth of economic activity that is following more or less the same model that Patagonia has essentially set up of a business doing good and doing well at the same time. And so that economic, model that we're talking about here, particularly for the oceans, specifically for conservation, needed and does need that single unit, right? That the impact and the finance and the monitoring and everything else can basically use. It needs the zeros and ones, and that's what a Seatree is. That's what a Seatree is, right?
You standardize impact, and in a way, I've always said that nonprofits, they sell impact. They're in a funny
That's
way
the
when you get
product
it.
at the end of the day.
That
Yeah.
is the product, right? And therefore, if you can simplify that product and make that a easy to purchase, like any product, then you're going to
Hmm.
sell more product. And so fundamentally, that's the core of your business model, right? Is to basically go
That is.
to these brands, corporates, and go, I know you want to buy impact, but you want to know that you're buying real impact. And you want to be
Yeah.
able to tell the story of that impact in both in stories, which is, nice videos and that, but also in stats. This many sea
Yeah.
trees, which you're up to 5 million, I might add. That's a lot of sea trees. Have you found that's a very positive story for brands and corporates? Which sorts of ones have you found have been most interested? Is it like ocean-based organizations, or do you think more generally everyone's like, no, we get it. Ocean's like really important to everything.
Oceans are hot, man. Oceans are hot today, Ben.
Excuse the pun.
Exactly. Um, yeah, but to be serious for just a second, many of the first movers and shakers with us, um, on this journey, have been from the ocean space, right? Um, but maybe one of the most surprising things, right, is that, yeah, I think we have over 300 brand partners right now,
It's
and it's across
fantastic.
every single vertical. Yeah. Show me another small to mid-sized nonprofit that has that, right? And it's not tooting our own horn, but it is to say that this model works. You should steal
Mm.
this model. Every other NGO group out there, or founders thinking about essentially starting one, should steal this idea, which is your impact. That is what you're selling. You need a way to sell this. You need to turn your impact into a product. For us, that's called a Seatree, right? That is what you actually have to sell. You have a product just like any other business, and your product is the most needed product on the planet, right? Like that's how real this is, and that's how simple and simplified this should actually be. So you're also going to have to learn how, in the same way that I found, like you need to understand how marketing works and how products work and product cycles and all of these things, all this infrastructure, which is already there, already operating, for you to basically tap into to fundamentally create the impact, the positive impact that you want to see in the world, right?
It really is a commercial overlay on a bunch of do-gooding going on. As you said,
Well, right. Yeah. And yeah, so um, Kate from 1% for the Planet really made that case, right? Of if we can get 1% of net going to these problems that we're trying to address, it can have a fundamentally game-changing um, role. Imagine if every single financial transaction on the planet had something connected to it. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, oh, I want mine to be $846 billion, and it easily can. Because when you start to have this unit of measurement, right, that can go into financial systems, and you want to talk to Visa and say, hey, listen, for every single transaction on, this set of cards, maybe it's just travel cards, right? You have some portion that gets allotted to a portion of a Seatree. It's on the blockchain. It's measurable. It's monitored. It's verified. It's no one's promise, right? It's there to actually see. That's when the game will essentially be changed. And I would say that we've been putting in the time and work to basically figure out if this is possible, figure out how to make that work, figure out how to, turn conservation, restoration into a real business that can compete with story that is so much better than anything else out there. And we're not just a one-off thing. As we start to work with other groups in this, we start building a more robust, stronger ecosystem of players in there, right? And the more players an ecosystem has, the stronger and more resilient it actually is. I see a very positive blue wave of restoration, conservation, and economic stability and activity and resilience rising up right now. We're part of that. And there's a lot of people in front of us that were leading the way. Patagonia would certainly be one of them, but there's thousands of businesses there, right? And there's thousands and thousands of organizations behind us that are hungry for this, that want to do this, that are looking for a model that's actually going to work. So if we can play that catalyst role and provide case studies for how this actually works, then we're doing our job.
Scalable model for saving our home planet. I love it. I want to move on to another product that you guys have been working on, which is biodiversity credits, which is a whole other way of generating funding for this sort of thing. I personally do know what a biodiversity credit is, but for the nice listeners out there, could you please explain it?
Ben, no one knows what a biodiversity credit is. Why would you? How could you, right? So obviously I'm joking, but a biodiversity credit really is just, it's another unit of measurement and impact intended to fund the conservation and restoration of biodiversity around the planet. It's not specific to the ocean, but the biodiversity credits that some of our projects and one day all of our projects will be producing are focused on ocean or coastal ecosystems and really provide this amazing pathway forward, again, for this like repeatable, scalable, understandable, and transactionable, model that any group can actually use to create the impact that they want to see in the world. WWF, or the World Wildlife Foundation, came out with a report maybe about a year ago, maybe it was two, but they basically said, out of all the populations of animals in the world that we're actually monitoring and recording, we've lost 75% of the actual volume of animals that we've been measuring.
In
Right?
about 50 years, right?
In less than 50 years, right? And in that same 50 years, we've also lost half the world's coral reefs, half the world's mangroves, half the world's kelp forests. You see a pattern happening here, Ben? And again, that's us. And so the obvious answer to the question, oh, well, if it's us that did that, then it's got to be us that needs to wind that back and replace it and make it better than it was before. And I guess, I'm not Pollyannish, or I'm paying attention to the news and the science and to David Attenborough and, the work that comes out of the UN Climate Council and all those. I understand the moment of danger, like the existential crisis that we're actually in around both biodiversity and climate, but there are pathways forward. This is not an issue of we don't have the right tools or we don't know what to do. We know exactly what to do. We simply have to have the political will, and we have to start putting capital towards making this happen. And that is the task at hand, right? And we can do that.
Well said. Couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. I'm going to move us on to, because that's very much, you discussed a lot in there, but funding is kind of where we began. But back to stories and engagement and all those sorts of things. You've obviously done a great job in the digital realm, but funny enough, it's all, the world's gone from real world to digital. You're actually going back to real world by setting up a purpose-built space in San Diego to engage people and educate people and excite people. Tell me about that.
Okay. Again, I literally just stole this from the best operating for-profit brands in the world. So the digital marketplace is absolutely saturated right now, right? Completely full. How many more ads can, a car company or a soap company try to throw at you across, the digital platforms? Everyone hates ads. Everyone's trying to avoid it. And they're just trying to push it. The biggest brands out there have basically said, we can't actually reach anyone else by having another ad come on their device, right?
Feed.
But what we can get, right, and what we need to start doing is to have these in person or in real life experiential places where people can see what the hell we do, experience us, have real time with the overall product and our brand and storytelling and whatever else. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're starting our own brand house, which is called the Sea House. And it's located in Encinitas, California, which is in San Diego. So at the Sea House, where we are essentially creating the home for ocean culture to live in Southern California, we're going to be bringing all these three things together. So surf and ocean culture, right? The restoration, conservation partners and know-how, and the scientific expertise that's coming there from the educational institutions, and bringing them together in this one really rich, bubbling cultural stew. And we're going to focus that energy on bringing back Southern California's giant kelp forest, because they've essentially had the same fate as the kelp forest up here in Northern California. It's a little bit less. They've lost between 60 to 70% of the kelp forest down there. So huge numbers still, not quite as bad. And it's going to be, it's going to be a hoot. It's going to be incredible. We've actually partnered with the Rob Machado Foundation and other local surf and film and ocean festivals. We're going to be doing programming on a weekly basis. So this is not like a pop-up, sort of brand house thing. This has got real staying power, and we're going to be bringing people together to have a great time, good food, good music, really engaging content, and we're going to provide a way for them to take action for the ocean ecosystems right there at the Sea House.
So celebrate your love of the ocean and then learn what you can do about it.
What was really interesting, right, is that when we were thinking about all the events and the other places that we go to try to get this overall message out, right? So the film fest and the concerts and sort of expos and whatever else, the beach cleanups. We figured, the ocean is literally at the epicenter of Southern California's identity and its economic backbone, technology, science, tourism, real estate, all these things, surf culture, right? And yet there's no home for ocean culture in Southern California. How crazy is that, right? There's groups doing things, great groups, Save the Waves and, Surfrider Foundation and, Wild Coast and whatever else. But there is no place where if you want to soak up ocean culture, every single week and do something, there is no home for it. That's why we're creating this.
Found the need. It's a great idea. I mean, as you say, surf films and that, everyone loves a surf film night. If there was one every week, even better, right? And there's some
Right?
good beers around all this too. There's you made a habit there. We've got one called Single Fin, which is, you get these sort of surf beers that fit quite nicely in among all
I
this
love
stuff.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. We actually, we have our favorite wine partner is actually called Head High Wine. And so,
Be overhead,
same vibe, right?
Double overhead. That's the port brand, double overhead.
Yeah, exactly right. That's the extra strength. Yeah.
I'm going to move on to you, because you are you come across at least as a very positive individual. We've talked about some pretty tough stuff here, but we've talked about it in a very, very positive way in terms of solution and celebration and all those.
You mean an ocean positive way?
Yep.
Yeah.
How do you personally, you're working hard, clearly you're doing good things, but, you're dealing with heavy things. How do you personally stay positive in a world that can be full of negative information?
Yeah. I guess I'm lucky to be able to get into the ocean. Maybe not every day, but literally I can ride my bike just a few blocks and even just look over the bluff there, right? So yeah, things do get heavy. It's a very heavy time. The world's in a pretty dark place right now with war going on, a lot of challenges on the economic side of things. The government in the United States seems to be acting in strange, weird, erratic ways that doesn't seem to have a positive benefit for not only us here, but for the rest of the world, right? So these are all things you're like, oh, I just want to go surf, right? And thank goddess that being connected to something that is as timeless and omnipresent as the ocean in that space, right? It really does provide deep healing, medicine for my soul, right? And I think what's also really interesting about that, have you heard of a book called Blue Mind by Wallace J. Nichols?
I have now.
New York Times bestseller. You got to go get it. So Jay Nichols was actually one of my mentors. He's actually passed on now, but he wrote this incredible book called Blue Mind. And it was really about the science, the neuroscience of what happens when you are in and around or under or literally even thinking about water. And your brain, the chemicals that are released, the endorphins, all of those things, like the sound of the ocean, right? You don't even have to be by the actual ocean, right? It was tapping into this really, primal thing about humans. I kicked us off on this journey talking about we literally carry the vestige of coming from the ocean within our own bodies, right? Our blood is the same salinity as the ocean. When we came out of it, we simply brought the ocean with us, right? And there's something about, thinking and hearing and being immersed. And whether you're in a pool, if you're a kid in the city and you can only get into a pool, it has very similar effects on this one, right? So I'm taking sort of my story of like, how do I do it? I'm lucky enough to be by the ocean and I can get to it on on a regular basis. But even like watching videos and movies and hearing sounds, those are all ways that we can tap in to what is perhaps one of the biggest mental health boosts that you can actually have, which is to start to cultivate and create the sense of blue mind in your own mind, right? It does. It's a wellspring, if you will, or it's a very deep well of healing that is actually available to all of us.
I think most people are drawn to water, whether it's, as soon as there's a river, let's jump in. You're right, pool. Like kids are just like, if there's a pool, they'll spend 5 hours in it. They'll get out to eat.
Hey,
if there's a puddle, they'll jump in it.
Right, exactly. I mean, like you literally, there's something that's hardwired in humans about that. And let's race towards that, right?
So get in the water, good for the mental health.
That's where the engagement is, right?
That's actually, I get this answer in very different ways from different people. Everybody fundamentally gathers around the idea of spend time in nature. For some people, it's forests and mountains, but me, I'm with you. I'm 100% get in the ocean and everything's okay again.
That's right.
Unless there's 100 people in the lineup and you can't get away. But then it's just annoying.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah. And then, that's where you have that change in mindset too. You're like, you know what?
It's true. Let it go.
I'm going left.
That's right.
You're like, I'm going to get, I'm going to take this soft top. I'm going to pull the fins out of it. And I'm just going to go slide my brains out on this left and try something new. And I don't need the biggest and best wave. Right. And it really is about you tapping into that more positive blue mind state.
It's very interesting you say that, actually. For all the non-surfers out there, we're talking about a very, very, very busy surf break and how you deal with it. Often I find I'll just go and find it. I see as a challenge, is there just some tiny little wave somewhere that only breaking a little bit, but nobody's noticed it. And I can just go and, get some little ones. And then it's a challenge of what can I make of this tiny wave? Even though it's a bit too small and maybe closing out or not quite breaking right, how can I maximize what I do? And it's a very positive kind of thing, isn't it? Learning how
it's a very creative thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, how to make the most of what's available to you. Surfing can be like that. Some days it's perfect and it's just you get to feast on delicious waves, and other days it's like, wow, how am I going to get 3 good waves out of this? let's figure this out.
And as a parent, right? It's like those are the exact types of skills that you are trying to teach and transfer, because those are applicable in whatever you actually choose to focus on, right? So
make the most of what you got.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
What's one thing people are surprised by when they find it out about you?
That I get to work in the marine science spaces, and I'll go up and I'll speak at the UN, and I get to work with all kinds of, world-class, scientists, and I literally have zero experience in my background, in my formal training background, that should allow me to actually do this. I went to art school, right? I've always been and I've always been interested in how, business works. And so all I did was take what I already had, right? And say, I want to apply it to this problem because I love the ocean. I love being in it. I need to start giving back because, as a surfer, or even, someone who's got a boat, or someone who's paddling, or whatever else. It's like, if we're just using the ocean space, for me, with all the challenges that the ocean is actually facing, there was some cognitive dissonance of like, I'm using this, I'm getting, I build my life around being close to this, but I'm not actually giving back here. And so I basically just said, great, what are the problems that my unique skill set, if I put them together, could actually help solve? And this is not about me. This is about everyone else that is like, oh, well, I'm not a scientist, or I'm not a marine biologist, or I'm not a materials specialist. It's like, if all those people that are qualified to do the right thing haven't done anything yet, that should be telling you something. It's like, you need to get in there, with the skills that you actually have, because I've found that typically the outsiders are the ones that know how to see where that little wave is that no one has noticed it's actually breaking, and how to do the best that you can and become the game changers that no one actually even saw. It's like the best ideas do not always come from, the white tower of academia. In fact, the ideas that typically get implemented are the ones that come from the ground up.
Totally. Well, they're built from real world experience.
That's right.
And a lot of what you speak of there is the ability to actually, I suspect the student came from art school, I suspect it's inherent in you, but one of the things you speak of there is the ability to bring other people together and provide create the space. It's Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, right? At the end, it was revealed he has the ring that has the power to bring together other people's powers.
Isn't that amazing?
A lovely
it's
twist in that. Yeah.
Yep. It's definitely a team sport, right? I mean, like this is, yeah. And, that's the, yeah. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, bring everybody you can, right? Because
True.
You're going to actually need them. And if you want to make any difference, if you want to have impact in this world, then you can't just build something that works for you. You need to actually build something that you can invite other people into and have what you're asking them to do be so cool and so interesting that that's a story that they want to be connected to individually, right? That's the secret.
That is great wisdom. It's very
Take it and
wisdom.
run with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you may have already answered this in the last question, but if someone wants to follow in your footsteps, someone's thinking, wow, this is so cool. I want to be like Michael. I want to like surf heaps and speak at the UN and like bring together awesome scientific and everybody else people and regenerate some part of nature, whether it be under or above the water. Where do they begin?
Yeah. That's always the toughest question to actually answer, right? Because I didn't have a blueprint when I started this, but the skill set that you need, there's one trait in particular, and that is curiosity, right? Being curious about what's possible. A friend of mine that does ocean literacy, Lindsay, from this org called Protect Blue that we've been working with for a long time. She always starts, these meetings or gatherings by saying, how might we do this, right? Because it doesn't have to be the most complete, solid, answer and a plan. It's like, how might you start thinking about doing this thing? And at the core of that is real, like, curiosity about how the world actually works and what's in it and how, amazing it is that even as messed up as many of our systems right now, it's a joy and a gift that we actually get to be here at all, right?
Sure is.
And being curious about how that actually works has been the, I would say that that all the people that I've ever hired for Seatrees have brought that. They may not have had the exact skill set that I needed or I thought that I needed in that moment, but what they are bringing is the ability to think creatively, be really curious about the world, start from where their own passion is, right? I love mountains. I love rivers. I love, jumping off of cliffs with a paraglider. That's great, but my real passion is rooted in the ocean. So if you start from that place and that space and have real curiosity about how the world works, and this understanding that you actually can make the difference that you want to make, then those are the key ingredients. After that, it's sending out emails, it's volunteering your time, it is calling everybody up and bugging them, It is making yourself useful and um, uh, ultimately indispensable. Those are the people that will find a place in these ecosystems. I can't say exactly how or when for any group, but that is at least on the startup side of things, right? Um,
Mm.
those are the ingredients that founders like myself really, uh, that's what we're ultimately looking for, right? Because business models may even change, right? But if you have a great person who is creative, inquisitive, curious, and can show up on time and not completely blow off the job when the waves turn on, then that's a great person. And we need to, gather great people with us in order to go far.
Mm. So love of the cause, curiosity as to what
Mhm.
might be the solution, belief you can actually solve it, and then determination to keep doing it. And part of that showing up even when the surf's good occasionally. That is a very good set of needs, if you like, that I think anyone can follow. That part of curious is positive. If you can stay curious and positive, but I think curiosity makes you positive, right? Because you're constantly finding new things.
They're completely wrapped together, right?
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so I'm really curious. You've gone through one season of
Mm.
your podcast. I've seen some great people on it, um, and I can tell that you're good at listening and filtering out and trying to see common connections here. So what have you seen so far in all the founders that you've been able to actually talk to? So if a young person came back to you, then Peacock, and was like, what do I need to do to start my journey, and to end up in the place that I want to be? Where's your wisdom, the condensed wisdom of all the people that you've been able to actually talk to?
There are a
Mm.
few things, and I'll forget to say them all now, obviously, because you've totally put me on the spot by reversing the interview situation here. Um,
You like
the
that?
Yeah, I love it. Well done. Um, I think the first one has got to be, as you say, a
Mm.
curiosity and interest in the problem. They definitely have that. The second is often they set themselves a very simple goal that they can use both for themselves and others as a rallying cry. There's a great brand interview
Yeah.
called Good Citizen Sunglasses, and they wanted to get plastic bottles out of waterways and off beaches and that. And they
Hmm.
wanted to go, well, how do we create a pull through of that so it has value, that garbage? And they went, oh, the bottle weighs, I think, 14 grams or 17 grams. Oh, sunglasses weigh the same. And, so they started out, it was
Simple,
one
right?
bottle. Yeah,
Metrics, that
that's it.
unit, right?
Spot
Yep.
on. One bottle, one pair. So that really, which is what you've done, one Seatree, and we need like God knows how many million Seatrees. So that simplification has been crucial, as I say, to then the communication piece of it.
Hmm. Yep.
There's an absolute dogged determination. I've spoken to people who have had to create entire supply chains to do what they want to do. And when you're trying to create a supply chain, it's just no, 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 it can't be done. And they've just gone, well, I'm just going to do it. So there is that determination
I,
in there.
I Yep. I sort of left
There's,
that part out, right? Of
oh,
like,
yeah.
you are going to get lots of no's. Yeah, we had to do the exact same thing. No one's ever tried to build a supply chain of sea trees across 6 different types of
Mm,
ecosystems around the world, right? But really, we look at our sea trees units as this overall supply chain, right? And you will get a lot of no's, a lot of no's. It's not that you shouldn't listen to them. You should look at what they may be telling you. But if you have a vision pushing through, um, no one is going to tell you that's the best idea in the world. Here you go. Um,
mm.
it really does take that, what I call grit, and um, yeah, that drive to keep going forward, because you actually know that you might not have the perfect solution, but you know where you're driving towards.
Yeah, and I think I think for my part, I've found there's two types of no's. There's no, it just can't be done, and there's no, I don't want to do it. I can't be bothered. And you got to figure out which no you're getting. And
Right.
probably the last
Yeah.
factor, there's more, but the one that always strikes me is because you hit on it. You said you had no experience in this space.
Mhm.
Almost every single founder I've spoken to came from that. There's
Isn't
a
that interesting?
yeah, there's a lady who does
Uh,
snowwear for people with bigger and smaller booties and stuff. That she basically split her pants one day and realized all the friends were doing the same while she was snowboarding, and went, "Well, I'm just going to make it for like us women who don't fit ordinary snowbands." She had no experience in that industry. The sunglasses I spoke to you about,
yeah,
zero experience in that industry. It's almost a superpower to go into an industry that you know nothing about because it
that's right.
forces the curiosity and it forces you to question the rules. And I think that's probably the most interesting take of all I've found is that it is that creativity comes from that, and it's that creativity that creates the change that we need versus having learnt, this is how things done, therefore this is how they have to be done. So that's probably the last one. Mm.
Mm, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to hear all of them, in that book because, yeah, maybe the last thing we can leave people with is that it's a learning journey. I don't care
Mm.
how much you think you know. There's always more, to actually learn and to put into good practice. So, there's a, there's a, like, isn't that wonderful, right? It's like we're never done. The work goes on long after you've gone. And if you can make and create space that can create an ecosystem of positivity that other people can come and take part in and thrive and take it past where you've been able to take it. That's the kind of legacy that I think is worth leaving.
Beautifully said. Before you go, so where do I find out more? Because obviously we talk about corporate sponsors and that, but people can actually
Yeah,
individually donate as well. Seatrees.org, correct?
that's exactly right.
Seatrees. Yep.
Yep. Just put it into your favorite search engine, Seatrees, and you'll find us on socials. You'll find us on the website. Come find us in real life, IRL, as the kids say these days, Ben.
Mm.
At the Sea House, there are so many ways to get involved. There's a small number of our projects that aren't as remote as down in the wilds of Baja or out in Indo or in Kenya, that people can actually come and get their hands dirty and their feet wet.
Mm.
And if you can't do that, there's an amazing number of projects that you can simply hop on your mobile device and be planting sea trees within about 30 seconds, right? If you can order a pizza or DoorDash or whatever else from your phone, you already know how to plant a sea tree.
Oh, well said. Get online to help the offline world.
That's right.
Um,
It's all connected.
Thank you. It's been wonderful talking with you, and I love what you're doing. Keep curious. Keep saving the world.
That's it, Ben. Thanks so much, and thanks for what you do, man. Gathering these voices and distilling that wisdom down into something that other people can use for their own dreams and goals. That's what it's about, man. So
That's the
kudos to
idea.
you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
See you, brother.